what's going on in another country. Dr. Shantanu is a practicing gynecologist in rural India, known for innovations in resources to poor settings, but he also is the president of their skeptic group there. And he's joining us today to talk about a new law that was put into place to fight against, well, what he calls here the committee, he's the president of the Committee for Eradication of Superstition. And let's welcome all the way from India, Dr. Shantanu.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Hall, and the committee members for giving me a chance to be here speaking to you. It's been a very interesting time, and we've been enjoying the conference for the past 3 days. Thank you so much. I'm here to narrate a tale of victory overshadowed by an assassination. The Maharashtra Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti, roughly translated as Committee for Eradication of Superstition, fought for 18 long years a battle to bring in an act against superstitions and blind faith. But before I actually begin, let me put into perspective where we are from and what have we been doing all these years. It was in 1989 that Dr. Narendra Dabholkar, whose picture you see here, he gave up his medical practice and formed the Maharashtra Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti. It's popularly known as ANISA, that is the acronym in the colloquial language Marathi. And I'll hence on refer to this particular organization as ANISA. So ANISA has been fighting and exposing godmen and charlatans challenging their miracles. We also have a prize money of amounting to $30,000 to anybody who proves supernatural claims, and the prize, like James Randi's prize, remains unclaimed for the past 30 years now. We have fought astrologers, we have fought soothsayers, and people selling lucky gems and feng shui and vastu shastra. The list is very, very long. We have pecked at and picked up traditional practices which were not eco-friendly. In fact, we just celebrated the eco-friendly Ganesha festival, and the upcoming Diwali festival. It was a tradition to burst crackers in public places, which created a lot of noise pollution. But through our efforts, the festival is now rather silent, and we have had a resounding success in bringing down the noise levels in Diwali, I must say. We have been trying to inculcate scientific temper in school kids through examinations, which are not just based on their curriculum, but about the insight that they have drawn from this knowledge of body of science. We work for casteless matrimony. As you're aware, India is a country beset with caste divisions, and finding a proper match, it basically depends on what caste the other person belongs to. So we've been fighting that because the committee sincerely believes that caste happens to be the greatest superstition. We have a monthly publication, a Varta Patra, which I must share with you, carried the translation of Richard Dawkins's The Magic of Reality, and it found a large readership, which was followed up every month. As we challenged superstitions and miracles and godmen and godwomen, and we tried to bring them to book, we garnered a lot of experience and became well conversant with the lacunae in the system. Fighting exploitation, sexploitation, inhuman rites and rituals, fighting powerful self-professed men of religion with brainwashed followers of plenty is no easy go. The keepers of the law and public order themselves were genuflecting in front of these miracle men. They often had a soft corner for these so-called sadhus and babas and saints and helped them with loopholes in the law, or they sought to weaken the evidence or tampered with it to suit the culprits. Democracy also means that public figures will usually toe the popular line. For fear of alienating potential voters, An-Nisa rarely received strong political backing. We also realized that the judiciary too had a limited insight into the problem, and often went by the letter rather than the spirit of the law. Few understood that superstitions formed the very core of many crimes, and perpetuating superstitions would actually harm the society at large. Under such circumstances, we demanded an anti-superstition act. Many hardly saw any role for legal succor. Most believed that literacy, education, and affluence will usher in the awakening necessary, and the evil, inhuman, ghastly practices will vanish like a miracle. However, our experience with the existing system and existing laws, we found that they were woefully inadequate to deal with certain peculiar situations. We did try. In certain situations, we invoked the Drugs and Magic Practices, Magic Remedies Act. But then we found that it was limited to objectionable advertisements, and punishment almost was notional, and conviction rarely ever happened. India has a penal provision against cheating, but cheating was interpreted mostly as financial losses in Ponzi schemes. And investigating agencies, courts, and executives rarely, if ever, interpreted it more broadly than this and simply refused to apply it to religious practices. Often when persons claimed miracle cure, we lodged complaints under the Medical Practitioners Act, but the Act deals mainly with the misdemeanors of the registered or the qualified medical practitioners. While the Act reined in qualified medical practitioners for making outlandish claims, it had no power to stop others from claiming anything, right from cure for AIDS or even cancer, just as we heard from our Brazilian friend. Now we have an act against bogus doctors in Maharashtra, that is the state where we belong to. So we began a long struggle. It was on 8th August 1989, almost 30 years ago, that the Committee for Eradication of Superstition, that is ANISA, was formed, and we soon demanded an act. In 1991, the first draft was presented to the government. Nothing happened, and after 10 long years of demand and protest, in 1999, the government promised enactment within 2 years. But still nothing materialized. After 2 years, all that we could extract from the government was more assurance. In 2003, things appeared to be moving. The then Chief Minister suggested that we change the name of the act from Anti-Superstition Act to Eradication of Evil Practices and Black Magic Act. Now, this was to stem the long, fruitless philosophical debates about what is belief and what is superstition and what is acceptable and what is not. The cabinet actually approved the act on 4th of August 2003, and on 15th August, which is our Indian Independence Day, the government flashed advertisements all over the newspapers claiming it to be the first government, the first state government to have a progressive act like this. But it was just that. The necessary next step of having the act tabled in the legislature and passing it by majority, that never happened. In fact, 2 years later, on 13th of April 2005, when the concerned minister tried to table the act, the minister was prevented by rowdy members of the legislature, the opposition members as well as the ruling party members, and the House was adjourned, adjournment was forced, and the government had to postpone the enactment. In July, the government readied a watered-down version of the act after prolonged committee meetings with right-wing representatives and leaders. But to our great surprise, as the agitation got traction and luminaries from various fields in the state wrote to the Chief Minister and his deputy, the upper house demanded a vetting of the act by a joint legislative review committee. Now, this was nothing but procrastination. The act was all the time on the agenda of the House, but only just. It was never tabled officially. Certain religious groups kept on protesting, and even after 20 amendments were made to pacify them, still the act could not go through the necessary legal procedures. Come April 2013, the cabinet approved the act for the 6th time. All the time this kept on happening. The cabinet would approve the act, but it would never be tabled in the House. So the cabinet approved the act for the 6th time, and in July the same year, the committee, that is ANISA, published a black paper as against a white paper exposing the doublespeak and the procrastination by the government. ANISA and its volunteers boldly faced backlash throughout the agitation period. ANISA was deliberately misquoted, a misinformation campaign was unleashed, propaganda drummed up, mass hysteria was whipped up. There were court cases, and we were accused of being the agents of the West, being funded by the West. Spurious complaints, court cases, threats, attacks, disruptions of rationalist meetings continued to foul the atmosphere. But we pressed on, always through legal, Gandhian, democratic, non-violent, and constitutional, yet novel ways of protests. Like, volunteers would go to government offices and slap themselves to underline the insensitivity of the government. Things came to such a head that on 20th of August 2013, the founder president of the organization, Dr. Narendra Dabolkar, was assassinated while he was on a morning walk. This shocked everybody, the proponents as well as the opponents, and something unprecedented happened. There was a groundswell of support for the ideas and ideals of Dr. Narendra Dabolkar. And less than a week from the assassination, the government issued an ordinance declaring its firm resolve to bring in the law. And finally, in December 2013, the ordinance was converted into the law when the House passed this particular motion by a voice vote. So, we had a victory, of course, but after the leader who actually fought the most was felled in this particular unfortunate situation. Coming to the Act has a schedule listing 12 specific deeds and practices, propagation or promotion of which is a cognizable, non-bailable offense. It also lists practices clearly out of the ambit of the Act, deeds that are not deemed to be black magic, inhuman, or agori, that is the term that is used in the Act, to prevent any misinterpretation of the law that might restrict religious freedom. The Indian Constitution allows you to believe in any god, any religion, and anything. So let's go through the list of offenses. According to the Act, to whiplash, to suffocate with fumes, to otherwise cause pain or harm, to force exhibitionist sexual act, to make one consume excreta so as to exorcise the person is a crime. The Act also says that it denounces display of so-called miracles to earn money, deceive or defraud or terrorize people as a crime. Following any inhuman or agori practices to receive blessings from a supernatural power is a crime. So it's a very, very progressive act, and I guess USA should copy it. Performing acts, including human sacrifice to divine water, to seek hidden treasure, etc., is a violation of the Act. Claims of having been possessed by a power inapprehensible by the senses, that are the exact words that are used in the law. So claims of having been possessed by a power inapprehensible by the senses, thereby threatening evil consequences if the wishes of such a person are declined, is a crime. Canvassing powers of witchcraft, black magic, claiming to diminish milk yield in cattle by such powers, or declaring someone a witch or a Satan incarnate, claiming that the person brings misfortune, illness, or such other troubles is an offense. Because social ostracization of women and declaring women as witches is a common practice. And the committee went through some of the cases, and we found that most of the time the reasons for such practices were economic. Somebody wanted to have the property of the family back in the family and such other things. Anyway, ostracizing, boycotting, parading a person naked in public is a crime. Now we also have a separate act against social ostracization based on caste, again in Maharashtra. Invoking ghosts, souls through chants of mantra. We saw that Banachek doing it yesterday. Invoking ghost souls through chants or mantra, claiming wrath of powers inapprehensible by the senses, preventing a person from seeking medical treatment under such guise, causing physical or financial harm is a crime. Preventing a person with a dog or snake bite or a scorpion bite from seeking medical aid and offering cure through chants, amulets, etc. is also a crime. India has the highest number of snake bite deaths in spite of the fact that there is an anti-snake venom available. Claiming to perform surgery with bare hands, claiming to change the sex of the fetus in utero is a crime as well. Claiming to be a couple or a paramour in the earlier incarnation, or offering to treat infertility and thereby sexually exploiting a person is a crime. To claim supernatural powers on behalf of a mentally challenged person and thus exploiting others is a crime. It has been 5 long years that we have had this act, and in the last 5 years, more than 500 complaints have been registered. The Indian legal system is rather slow. 10 of these have reached their legal conclusion, and in all 10 cases, we've had convictions. So this is 100% conviction rate. I must also tell you that more than 80% of the victims in these cases are women. And that is because women are at the lowest rung of the social ladder and the economic ladder, and they are the ones who are, exposed or most vulnerable to exploitation through religion and so many other practices. So it's also a law that leads to women's emancipation. Of course, we have had the law. So what next? Now, of course, we plan to find like-minded organizations like the CSI. We have networked with like-minded organizations in India and demanded a similar law in 10 different states. There are 32 in all, but we've demanded a law in 10 different states. The state of Karnataka already has a law in place just like Maharashtra. Karnataka is the state with Bengaluru as its capital. So we have a law there. We also are demanding a central legislation regarding this. We intend to fight pseudoscience, especially pseudo-medicine, because that is what causes a lot of harms. Charlatans have also changed their ways. Now hardly anybody claims any miracle in Maharashtra. They go to neighboring states and do it. And irrational medical practices are now disguised as Ayurveda. That is our traditional system of medicine. Anyway, it is this far that we have come, and I extend my invitation to all of you, organizers and participants alike, to come and attend a conference which is scheduled sometime in August, that is 9th, 10th and 11th of August in Mumbai, to mark 30 years of skeptical activism by the Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Shantanu, for this extraordinarily important message, informing us of what's going on over there, and also some of the great news that you had to share with us. So our next speaker, that is, comes all the way from Washington, the state of Washington. So a little closer to home this time. Mr. McLeod is an attorney. He has a master's from Stanford, a law degree from UNSW, and he specializes in internet-related issues. But today he wants to tell us about what patents really mean and how they're often abused. So let's welcome to the stage Mr. McLeod.
Good morning, everyone. Well, let me tell you, thank you, Ray, for this, making this a business expense. That's really fantastic. First of all, I'd like to say that this is a 60-minute presentation done in 15 minutes, and very few of you probably know much about patent law, and none of you have done the homework. So I'm going to speak really fast, far faster than I ever have in any courtroom. I'm going to try not to trip over my words. You're wondering probably, why is it that the Patent Office issues patents on pseudoscience and homeopathy? You probably can't even believe that happens. Yesterday you heard that the FTC is cracking down on homeopathy. I'm here to tell you that the Patent Office is providing it legitimacy and probably will continue to do so. First of all, this is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, hire a lawyer. All right, if you don't know what a patent is, you probably know what an inventor is. You've probably heard of some guys like Edison and his light bulb, or this guy that revolutionized the fashion industry named Einstein with his patented blouse. Now, because you know about these really smart people, you probably have some ideas that patents are given to really brilliant people for doing really brilliant things, and that they're really deeply evaluated and they're peer-reviewed. As Adam and Jamie might say, let's do some myth-busting. So, patented woo goes back centuries. It really does. There was a time when if you took some remedy to the monarch and you cured someone, made them feel better, they would issue what we call letters patent. They would officially recognize your ability to sell this compound. And this continued right through the 20th century. And the specialty, if you will, it became known as a patented medicine because it was officially sanctioned by an organization. But at that time, the US did not officially recognize chemical patents. And in fact, those patented medicines, their formulas were kept secret. Whereas a US patent, you actually have to tell somebody what goes into everything. Today, you can go to the USPTO website and search for homeopathy, something like that nature. You will find homeopathy and patents. Now, who cares if they're patented or not? Well, first of all, I can tell you the people who are selling the crap care if it's patented because it provides that legitimacy. They can put it in their advertising. My patented deal. And some of you probably have heard of this guy named Brzezinski and a cancer treatment and his 8 patents on his cancer treatment. And he still advertises that today. You care because you want things to be validated in some way, scientifically, that they work and that they're going to provide relief. And of course, the people that are going to take it, they want to know because they might die if they don't. So, we come to this example. This is a recent U.S. patent application. I selected it because, well, homeopathic is in the title. And the guy who's applied for it is from Las Vegas. And the claim is so simple that everyone here should be able to understand it. He's basically saying, I have a treatment for interstitial lung disease. That's a broad category of things, but just to pick one, think of asbestosis or mesothelioma. And he's saying if you take some tea tree oil, some vinegar, and some aloe vera, you have a treatment. Yeah. Now, in non-patent lingo, this means that if I take an ounce of the tea tree oil, an ounce of aloe vera, and an ounce of vinegar, and I mix that up with 40% of anything else on this planet that I can find, I have a treatment. Does anyone believe that works? Anyone, just raise your hand. Okay. So, you don't know anything about patent law? This is patent law in 3 minutes. What can be patented? Literally, it's incredibly broad. Any new useful process, machine, manufacture, or composition of matter. It sounds like it's everything under the sun. The key words are, it's got to be new, not done before. It's got to be useful, works for its intended purpose. And then the statutory classifications of things that we'll look at. What is a patent? It's a right to exclude other people from making, using, or selling what it is that you claim. The patent itself is supposed to teach the person of ordinary skill in the art exactly how to make and use the thing that you've claimed for its intended purpose. They come in different types. Utility is the one that we care about. The utility patent has 2 main portions. It has specification, that's the text and drawings, that tell you, it's the instruction manual that tells you how this thing works, and it has the claims. And this is the legal boundaries that give a notice to other people, don't steal my stuff. They generally are good for 20 years, and that'll become important later. What can't you patent? Well, you can't patent mathematical formulas, and so our dear friend Albert Einstein, E equals mc squared, theory of relativity, all that other good stuff we associate with him, completely unpatentable. Completely. Another thing that we'll point out, naturally occurring substances. We probably know there's a periodic table, and everything from 1 to 92 is naturally occurring, can be found in nature. Those can't be patented. What about new things? Well, it just so happens that this guy, Glenn Seaborg, made new element. Element 95. He also made element 96. And because he was the first person to actually teach someone how to make this element, he was awarded a patent for that. So, back to our example. This is a composition of matter, isn't it? It is. So, is it new? Is it useful? Click. How do you get a patent? Well, that's the key. That is the key. The process begins when this guy puts together a piece of paper that explains what it is he claims and what it is he can do. He sends it to the patent office with a big check. Patent office looks at it and says, well, what are we going to think of this? Well, let's give it to an examiner and see what he says. This is what an examiner does. He reads the application. He looks at the claims. He looks for prior art. Has anyone done this before? And then he writes up a piece of paper and sends it back to the applicant and says, this is what I think of your application. When he does this, the examiner's entire work with this patent application is classified into these tasks. He sends an office action, maybe a second, maybe a third. He does all of this work until he finally gets to a stage where he's either allowed the patent or he's finally rejected it. This entire process is called a production unit, and this is key. Why? Because the examiner is given a very limited amount of time to review the patent, and this time will be spread over a course of 2 to 3 years. And if we see here, a mechanical patent, a simple mechanical patent for a fishing lure, he gets 16.6 hours. Let's ramp that up to a satellite communication system. He doesn't even get twice as much time to evaluate if this actually works. And immunotherapy, somewhere in the middle. That's not a lot of time. What does he not do? He does not analyze whether it works. There's an extremely low threshold for utility. Basically, if you write in the application that my thing is useful, the examiner will say, yeah, okay, I'll take your word for it. No working model requirement. That goes back hundreds of years, or actually about 150. The only exceptions to that currently, to my knowledge, are things like cold fusion. If you claim perpetual motion or reversing aging, someone in the patent office is going to want you to come down and prove it. But short of that, they're not going to evaluate if it works. It's not going to be peer reviewed. None of that is going to be performed. In reality, in that limited amount of time, the examiner is going to skim the specification. He's going to look at the claims. He's going to pick out some keywords. He's going to use those for a search of a patent database and see if he can find that anyone's done it before. He's going to map that disclosure against your claimed invention, and then he's going to decide whether or not he's going to allow your patent and send you something about that. There's a lot of flaws in this process. Only a few. Again, that limitation on time. The fact that someone can make up words to put in their claims. I put in here extrudingly. Last week I actually saw in a patent claim from Sandoz, I believe it was, anti-neoplastonically. The examiner may not think of synonyms to search for when he does this. I mean, here it talks about vinegar. Do you think he searched for acetic acid or ethanolic acid? No, he didn't. The patent office's database is quite small. The examiners are educated, but they're not experts. These are not the leading researchers in the field. They're smart people, but they're under a real time crunch, and it's very hard for them to keep up. There's policy reasons as well. The government favors the issuance of more patents. Why? Because more patents bring in more money. More patents makes our country look stronger, have better rates of innovation than others. In fact, we've had massive fights in the patent world over whether more patents is better if there are lots of bad patents. What I'm basically saying is there's no political will to change this. Back to our example. In reality, you see a set of terms that the examiner can provide a search for. And when I read this application, I was pretty sure there would not be any medical literature that covered all 4 of those things. And I was right. I was right. First of all, you don't see percentages of ingredients in most things, except pesticides. He wasn't claiming a pesticide, although his composition may actually be a pesticide. And so this happened. In September, the patent issued. That primary set of keywords came up with no prior art. However, the examiner made him change the title for him. He removed homeopathic because the dilution percentage was not consistent with homeopathy. You didn't add enough water, so you can't call it homeopathic. And he also went to some narrower claims that actually explained what you're supposed to do with this. You put it in a humidifier and you inhale it, and supposedly your asbestosis will feel better. Bad patents happen everywhere. This is how we get things like the method of swinging on a swing, the method of exercising a cat using a laser pointer. That's just amazing. And my favorite, this is the one that inspired the talk, came out several years ago, Diane's Manna. And it's a wall of text, but basically it's a claim to cure cancer, pain, and bipolar disorder consisting of eating food. And I suspect that the only real active ingredient in this list is the wine, and it just really makes you feel a little bit better. If you're not convinced, here's another infamous patent from 1987. This is a method for keeping a severed head alive in a cabinet. It was issued in 1987. If anyone thinks you could keep a severed head alive in 1987, now I know there were some horror movies. They saved Hitler's brain. That's a really classic film, but I don't think anyone would actually do it. Now, killing these patents is very hard work. They can only be killed during their enforcement period, which is a very short period of time. And it takes a lot of money to do it. And if no one's going to actually sue someone on that patent, then there's no economic will to chase them down. But once they expire, they are forever. So Mr. Brzezinski and his clinic can continue to claim that they have a patented cancer treatment method. And they can continue to obtain money from people who are desperate. And that's a problem. I have no solution for it. I'm here to tell you that today, if someone tells you, my thing is patented, I have this amazing cure, I have this amazing substance that will make your life better, your number one response should be, so what? The fact that you have a patent doesn't mean anything because the patent office never tested what you did. There's no peer review. There's nothing out there, in fact, that sets out that you've done anything useful. And that should be your response. And you don't have to have a technical degree in that field to say that. You can offer that up, and it's a solid basis. I've got more information here. I could say lots of more things. I could take more time, but I'm not. Again, thank you, Ray. Oh, I wanted to say I never thought Amazing Randy would be my opening act, but here I am. Please vote on November 6th. That's your opportunity for change. Thank you.
So did anybody get to see the sections on Bigfoot and 9/11, especially the microspheres?
Yes.
All right. Just want to point out that both those gentlemen were on the Sunday paper stage last year, and they made it to the main stage. So congratulations, Craig and Mick. So today we have another talk, and it's ready to go. go. So let me introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Stephen Hupp. He's a licensed clinical psychologist and also a professor of psychology in the Clinical Child and School Psychology program at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. And today he's going to tell us about how it reminds me a little bit of Adam Conover, pseudoscience ruins adolescence.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm really excited to be here. And as it was inspired by having Adam Ruins here earlier, so I thought that would be a way to kind of spin my talk. But I also have a subtitle for my talk, an alternative subtitle that I didn't originally submit, Sex, Drugs, and a Guinness World Record Goal, because at the end of my talk, I'll talk about an attempt we made, an official attempt to break a Guinness World Record related to one of our myths that we've been working on. I have 3 teenagers, and so that also inspired this talk. And I, this summer, took a trip to Colorado, a road trip with the 3 teens, and did get to experience how hard it is to be around 3 teens nonstop for a week. If you look at the one in the middle in particular, his eyes will pierce your soul when he's not happy with what is happening during the trip. And because of that, I developed a few rules for myself during our trip to Colorado. So rules with traveling with teens: don't suggest to teens that an SUV provides plenty of room for a road trip. Don't suggest to teens that they look at the scenery instead of their devices. Don't neglect to find out if there's a fire ban at your campsite before you arrive. Fires are 95% of the camping experience, it turns out. Don't take pictures of teens. Don't enter selfies with teens. Don't video yourself describing the fun you're having near teens, e.g. vlogging. Don't say cringy things, e.g. vlogging. Don't ask teens exactly what cringy means. Don't start using the word cringy, because when you say cringy, that is actually very cringy. And don't let teens see you make list of rules. And you can probably, if you've been around teens, relate to my experience of why I decided to make this list of rules, because it is kind of fun to realize how hard it is to be around teens. But it actually, joking about teens like that, kind of goes against one of my 3 major messages for the day. I've got 3 messages I wanted to get through today. One is that teens these days get a bad rap, which I kind of gave my teens a bad rap, but they did still kind of deserve it. And then secondly, many ways we try to help teens these days do not work. And then lastly, we do have some evidence-based approaches to helping teens cope with the challenges in life. So I wanted to open with this poll of adults that surveyed teens these days, and you can see that 82% believe teens these days have less sense of morals than in the past. 74% believe teens are more reckless than in the past, and there are a whole bunch of other questions that were pretty similar, that people have a pretty low opinion of teens these days. Here's a quote from Aristotle that shows us that people have always had kind of a low opinion of teens these days, that they're always worse than the teens of before. So Aristotle's quote: "They are hot-tempered and quick-tempered and apt to give way to their anger. Bad temper often gets the better of them." And I think a lot of people would still describe teens that way these days. My colleague, Dr. Jeremy Jewell, and I conducted our own poll. We conducted a poll of college students to see what they thought about teens these days. And we asked some, we gave them several statements. Some we believe to be myths, and some were evidence-based approaches. I'm not going to share with you all of them, but I'll share with you some of the myths that we asked our participants about. For example, and they weren't worded exactly like this, they're a little wordier, but basically this idea that adolescence is filled with turmoil, or all adolescents experience this storm and stress period of life, and 82% of our sample endorsed that idea. Teens these days are worse behaved than previous generations. Even 62% of our participants endorsed that belief. And the Scared Straight program, which sends teens to prisons after they've committed some type of offense to get scared, so they learn they don't want to go to prison. 64% of our participants believe that was an effective program. Touching on each of those topics then a little bit, The storm or stress model, this idea that all adolescents experience extreme turmoil, was largely first presented by Stanley Hall in 1904. But if you look at teens these days, about 20% of them do experience pretty significant turmoil, but that means that's 80% of teens these days that actually describe their life experience as pretty pleasant. Another point here is that 67% of teens have a secure relationship with their parents and actually feel pretty good about the relationship that they have with their parents. So teens these days are actually doing pretty good. If you look at juvenile arrest rates over the last couple decades, this graph is from 1990 and it goes up to 2014. You can see property crimes have been decreasing, violent crimes have been decreasing that teens are committing, and so things are actually moving in a good direction for teens. Regarding the Scared Straight program that I mentioned, I thought I'd just kind of present this one study, but there's several studies that were done in the 80s looking at the Scared Straight program, and the data looks just like this across all of the different studies. It's not mixed results. They quite often look just like this, where they would randomly assign kids who'd committed some type of offense to a Scared Straight group or to a control group who'd get nothing. And the kids in the scared, and then they would look to see after they got scared straight or not, did they commit more offenses down the road? And you can see the kids who were in the Scared Straight group were considerably more likely to commit more offenses than the kids in the control group. And so as you can see, not only is Scared Straight an ineffective program, there's a good chance the data shows it's actually harmful. It makes kids, for some reason, more likely to commit more crimes. But that didn't stop what used to be the Scared Straight Academy Award-winning documentary to be kind of revisited with the Beyond Scared Straight television program that luckily ended a couple years ago, but it's a pretty recent show. We also asked we presented a couple statements about sex. One example is caring for an infant simulator doll increases teen abstinence. So an infant simulator doll, these days a lot of kids will take home like this little doll, but it's like got a computer chip inside. It's like a little robot baby, and you take it home for the weekend, and it cries, and you have to feed it, and then the computer chip keeps track of how good a job you did to take care of the baby. Did you drop it? Did you shake it? Did you feed it when you were supposed to? And part of the idea of that is that will make you not have sex because you don't want to have a baby, and 50% of our participants believe that was effective. Most teens who take virginity pledges wait until they're married to have sex. 38% of our sample believe virginity pledges are effective. And we presented this one, sexting is only a teen problem. And 78% of our sample believe sexting is only a teen problem. Now looking at each of those topics in a little more detail, we can see just like juvenile arrest rates have been on the decline, so have teen pregnancy rates. They've been declining from 1992, this goes up to 2015. The infant simulator doll, there's a picture of one. This one's called the Baby Think It Over. There's also Ready or Not Tots. And you can kind of see the back there. It's got the computer work that keeps track of how good a job you're taking care of it. You can actually, the teacher in the class can set it to like an easy baby or a difficult baby. I don't know why you'd send them home with an easy baby if you're using this program, but you can. But it's been researched quite a bit, and research never shows it actually changes behavior in teens. It might change some of their attitudes, but it never changes their sexual behavior. Regarding virginity pledges, research shows that the majority of kids who take virginity pledges still have sex before they're married. And so that shows us virginity pledges aren't terribly effective at reaching their goal. Regarding sexting, well, it's true. 10 to 15% of teens do engage in sexting, but the myth we presented was that it's only a teen problem, and so do 33 to 53% of adults, and quite a few get in big trouble for it, and you know who you are. We also presented a few myths and evidence-based statements related to drugs. From some examples, most teens party with drugs or alcohol on the weekends. 70% of our participants believe that. Specialized goggles, also called fatal vision goggles, prevent impaired driving. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but 54% believe that. And DARE programs prevent drug use. 40% believe that. So if you look at drug use this is from 2001 to 2017, in teenagers, it's dropping substantially across all these different drugs. And then if you look at alcohol and cigarettes, it's also dropping quite a bit from 1991 to 2017. We don't have historical data on vaping, which is a relatively more modern phenomenon. But I would say out of all the things listed up here, I think there's some research starting to show that is on the incline. And so something I'm hearing kids doing in our middle schools nearby. And so it's something, if I was going to worry about drugs in teens these days, vaping would be at the top of my list. Here's the fatal vision goggles are these goggles you wear. It alters your perceptual field and it mimics the effects, some of the effects of being drunk. And then DARE programs often use them, but other programs use them too. And then when you're wearing the goggles, you're supposed to walk a straight line, or in this case, these teens are riding on pedal carts, and it's supposed to make you realize how vulnerable you are when you're drinking and driving, that you can't do it that well. But if you look at their faces, they're actually pretty happy. And so it probably makes impaired driving seem pretty fun. Even on my campus, somebody was doing this. They were having students wear fatal vision goggles while they were playing volleyball, which is really hard to do too, but a lot of fun. The DARE program, from the beginning, DARE has pretty much avoided doing their own research on their program, but other people started researching it, and research continues to show DARE is not a terribly effective prevention program, even though it's in the majority of school districts in America. But I think the bigger, more important issue is, why does the mascot for DARE not wear pants? You would think if you were developing a mascot for your drug abuse prevention program, you would have him wear a responsible wardrobe. So I did a deeper dive into this issue because it was bothering me, and what I discovered was that the original mascot for DARE actually was not Darren the Dare Lion. It really was Yogi Bear. Yeah, the first spokesbear for DARE. And he, Yogi Bear famously doesn't wear pants, and they decided to stop paying Yogi Bear to be their spokesbear, and so they decided to stick with the no pants decision, though. So I thought that was fascinating. So some of my messages today, I already went over that teens these days get a bad rap, and I think I gave you some evidence for why they really don't deserve the bad rap that they always get. I gave you some examples of ways that we try to help teens that really are not effective. And just briefly wanted to mention, we do have some good evidence-based approaches to helping teens deal with these issues I've described. For example, comprehensive sex education programs that teach abstinence, but they also teach about contraception, are more effective than abstinence-only prevention programs. Life skills training is a prevention program for drug use and alcohol use, and it has a pretty good amount of research support. And then multisystemic therapy, or MST, is an effective program for preventing additional acts of juvenile delinquency. We explored myths and evidence-based approaches in our books. And in our first book, the Great Myths About Child Development book, we also debunked a myth about reading. And the myth we debunked was that most babies can learn to read with the right reading program. You might remember the Your Baby Can Read program. As it turns out, your baby cannot read. And their false claims led to a $185 million settlement with the FTC. But rather than just debunking claims in our books, we wanted to do something, so we put out a call to action, and we started collecting gently used books to give to children at the Head Start program that I work for. And there's over 1,000 kids in the program. We collected from our community over 1,000 gently used children's books and gave one book to every kid in our Head Start program with a note home to parents about literacy and ways to promote it, and how the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends daily reading with kids starting from the age of birth. But you can see here's one of our book giveaways. Here's one of our book giveaways with all the kids. We got some local press for that, and we also won a free little library that we put on our Head Start, and kids can swap out the books that they were given with our free little library. In our second book, we also debunked a myth about reading, but the myth was that most teens hardly ever engage in leisure reading these days. Research shows that about half of teens engage in leisure reading at least once a week, so they're still reading. Now, it is on the decline, though, so leisure reading is on the decline, so this is something I think it's reasonable to be a little worried about, that teens are reading less and less. For our new book, Great Myths of Adolescence, which is coming out next month, and So we're excited about that. But we also wanted to kind of continue our tradition of trying to collect books and to give away to kids. And so, as I mentioned, we had an official attempt for a Guinness World Record. I contacted Guinness, said, hey, we want to try to break one of your records. The record was the longest line of books placed on the ground end to end. And I thought we could have a chance of breaking it. We tried to break it on International Literacy Day. The record we had to try to beat was 1.4 miles of books laid on the ground, and it included over 13,000 books. So we had a lot of different people in our community donate loads and loads of books. Here's a bunch of boxes of our books and an exhausted student. And for example, 1,500 books came from teens and tweens in one of our middle schools. Over 60 people volunteered on the day, and most of them were emerging adults, aka college students, from the often maligned millennial generation. And it took an entire day to lay down all the books that were donated. In fact, we didn't even have enough time to lay down all the books that were donated because it turns out it takes a really long time to lay down all these books. But we laid them down. We couldn't let there be a single gap between any two books or it would ruin the record. But we also wanted to take up as much space as possible, so you could see we put them diagonal so they would take a little extra space. I'm not a math guy, but I figured that out. You have to pay a lot of money to Guinness for them to send their own judge, which we didn't want to do, so we had to come up with our own crew of people that could be our official witnesses, including a land surveyor, an accountant, a police lieutenant, and a lawyer. And then we also had a videographer video the attempt. And we did. We broke the Guinness World Record. But you have to pay Guinness a lot of money if you want to find out quickly. So it took 49 weeks to get an answer from Guinness. 49 weeks. We just found out in August of this year, and we did it in September of the previous year. But our line was 2.64 miles, over 21,000 books. We had 30,000 books, but we just ran out of time. It's just a lot of books to lay down. This time we got a shout out in the New York Times for celebrating International Literacy Day in a quirkier way. We donated the books to several places, including a charter high school juvenile detention center, and we continue to donate to the Head Start program. But last year, instead of one book for every kid, we gave 5 books to every kid in our Head Start program. So that was 5,000 books, so that was exciting. Thank you. We still have more to give away. We also use the book giveaways to encourage daily reading, which I mentioned, and a specific type of reading with kids called print referencing, which helps speed up their literacy process. And we learned that a Guinness World Record attempt is a great way to give adults, tweens, teens, emerging adults, and the rest of us a little extra motivation to work toward a great goal. I want to thank some of the people that helped with the Guinness World Record attempt, my co-authors on the books, and the series editors, and then lastly, my mom, Deanna Hupp, who's dedicated her life to promoting literacy in children, and then my fiance, Farah, who is at her very first Skeptical conference today.
All right, great stuff. We have 2 more to go. Okay, our next speaker comes from basically one of the best, I think, utilizations of some of the talent at these TAMs and at CSICons. The kind of impetus from this came from the stage, actually, Sunday Papers with Susan Gerbic. I think that she's an alum of the Sunday Papers, and she's talked about guerrilla skepticism. Today, we're going to hear from Rob Palmer. So he's got a degree in mechanical engineering. He designs spacecraft, but what he likes to do is help with the guerrilla skeptics, and he's going to give us an insider's tale on what that's like. So let's welcome to the stage, Rob.
Thank you. First off, thank you very much for accepting my paper, obviously, and thank you very much for making me follow something about drugs, sex, and rock and roll. So actually, that's my audio test, because I have a few audios in here, and I didn't hear anything. So let's check it. No. There's no audio there. It's better with the audio, but that's pretty cool anyway. So as a mechanical design engineer who worked on spacecraft, we put them on top of rockets to go up. You know, I dreamed to work on something like that, but I never got to work for SpaceX.
You're right in the video. Oh, sorry.
Should I do it again? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, there you go.
We don't have the slides now. Okay. Yep. No, it's not gonna happen. See, it's better with the audio. Okay, you can leave that. Okay, so no one asked me, but water, then toothpaste, and then I brush. And by the way, very hot water for a long time because, like, you know, germ theory of disease people. No one I couldn't believe some people didn't even use water. That's crazy. Okay, so I am glad to see so many people stayed. I had a nightmare that no one was going to be here at all, so that's really cool. By a show of hands, how many know nothing about this subject, or maybe just you knew the name but not much? Okay, so there's some people in the audience, that's good. This is targeted to people who, it's kind of in the middle. It's going to give you a very quick overview of what we do, and it's also going to, you know, give people who know something about it perhaps some more information than they ever heard before. So my other goal, besides instructing you on this, is hopefully to get, if there's any skeptical couch potatoes like I was 2 years ago, just listening to podcasts, reading the books, so yeah, I wish I could do something, and I didn't know what to do. Well, this is the thing you can do. So, oh, by the way, the founder of our organization is actually in the audience. Susan Gerbic is here. I don't know if
Rob, I want to just know, why are you wearing that?
Why am I wearing? I
kinesio.
decided to advertise for the organization. A gorilla doesn't wear a business suit.
No, the kinesio tape.
Oh, okay, you noticed that.
Yeah.
Because it works, yeah. We'll talk about that a little later. Thank you, Susan. That was smooth. Okay, so that was my introduction initially, and that doesn't matter regarding what I do now, because I did one thing on space, a cat, Felicite, but mostly I do pseudoscience and alt-med and fight Gwyneth Paltrow. As a teen, I believed in woo. Then I found the Skeptical Inquirer. That's a story I hear a lot. And it took me a long time between when I was a teen and when I actually discovered there's a skeptical movement and people do things. And mostly when I started to listen to podcasts, because I'm an engineer interested in astronomy, I looked up Universe and I got the Skeptic's Guide. Oh, what is this? It's fantastic. So then it took me not too long, a couple more years, and then I found out that, hey, this is this thing called the Guerrilla Skeptics. Because I heard it on the Skeptic Zone from Australia. Richard Saunders played, I think it was an interview with Susan. And I joined quickly and became a skeptical activist. Actually, I got lucky because I wrote a paper on the GSOW, which is what we call Guerrilla Skeptics, by the way. And I sent it in to Barry Carr, and they published it, and they liked it so much, I have a column now. So that's all through the Guerrilla Skeptics. It wouldn't have happened if I hadn't joined them. All right, so Wikipedia. So some people who are not multilingual don't realize it, but a lot of the articles you can click on the left side and see the other language versions of the article. It's not a direct translation. Every one of them is done by someone. Now, sometimes that's somebody on our team. English is by far the language which has the most. But why do we even care? Why do we do this on Wikipedia? Well, these are the
most heavily trafficked websites in English, in order. Google, that's no surprise. Then you get YouTube, then you get Facebook. None of those are bastions of knowledge all on their own. And then you get Wikipedia. So that's why we do it. And Google points to Wikipedia. And in fact, sometimes Facebook points to Wikipedia. And another reason is that journalists use it for their stories. So we actually luckily found an example. Mike Jurasik, who's in the audience, is one of our editors, and he's a fighter, and he reads USA Sports. And he found this article, quite just accidentally. Ronda Rousey, who's a woman fighter, was interviewed, and then they wrote an article about it. She sat down for Tyler Henry, the guy who speaks to the dead relatives of the Hollywood famous. So he has his own show. It's been on for 3 years. So mostly people, when this happens, the Kardashians sit with Tyler Henry, you get a puff piece. In this case, it wasn't quite a puff piece. This journalist somehow found out that, hey, people have called Tyler Henry a grief vampire, and that the IIG, our organization, awarded him the Truly Terrible Television Award. Well, where did he find that? Let's look at the Wikipedia article for Tyler Henry. Ooh, look, the same thing's right up there. Isn't that a coincidence? Let's scroll down a little bit. What do we get here? 3 times on the page, grief vampire. The Guerrilla Skeptics added all that information. So that's why that wound up in USA Today rather than it being a puff piece. Okay, another reason that Wikipedia is important is because Michael Scott really loves it.
Wikipedia is the best thing ever. Anyone in the world can write anything they want about any subject. So you know you are getting the best possible information.
So that was said early on in the series when he might have been right, sarcastically, because they let anybody publish anything. In the years it's been around, there are now bots which go and they take vandalism off instantaneously. There are experienced editors. If you publish a page, they get a flag about it and read it. And our group, as well as other people who are editors, concentrate on the pages that are important. Not so much the plot of a movie, that's probably still hit or miss. But if you go to a science page or something on pseudoscience or skepticism, it's much more likely to be correct. So now we're going to talk about what our team specifically has done. So what are we? We're international. That's a big thing. And therefore, we actually work in many, many languages all around the world. And we don't take a dime from anybody, despite what people say about being a shill for Monsanto, etc. I can guarantee you my bank account has not gone up doing this. We're all well trained by the aforementioned Susan Gerbic. She still handles the training herself. And that's our goal right there. And there's a sub-goal: eradicate all the woo on the encyclopedia. Of course, that's not going to happen, but we try our best. And like I like to say, we fight the forces of the dark side. And that's people who do believe in the other side and believe the encyclopedia should be fair and balanced for pseudoscience and old men, etc. Anyone can edit Wikipedia even without an account. Not everyone knows that. So anyone who's reading it who believes in anything, that they saw Bigfoot or they were followed home by UFO, do go and put that on there. And we and other editors have to take that off. We have the skills, we know how to do this right, so we don't get our edits reversed. It's called reverted, actually. And the fact that Wikipedia is on our side helps. This is Wikipedia's position on fringe material. The articles have to reflect the current mainstream consensus. You can have an alternate scientific point of view if there's indecision in science. But the most important point, and I have to post that a lot of times on the talk pages when I'm arguing with other editors who want to tell me about their trip up into space on a UFO. You do not have to be fair and balanced regarding pseudoscience. So let's get some specifics here. These are 3 articles that I personally wrote in the last couple of years. Photo Arc is about animal extinction across the planet. It's a National Geographic project. There was no Wikipedia article. I happened to see an exhibit. It's a traveling exhibit. I was so impressed. Oh, how is there no Wikipedia page? So now there is. I heard this gentleman, Bob Nygaard, being interviewed on Skepticality by Derek. He's the one and only detective who prosecutes psychics and gets clients' money back. $3 million or so in 8 years. It's quite astounding. I made him an art. That's for Bob. And then, by the way, I got to interview him for Skeptical Inquirer, and there's a 2-part interview with him. You should look that up. It's really cool. And that's Skeptical Inquirer online, so you can get it. And then last year, I saw the Science Moms documentary screened right here. Well, no, up the strip at Excalibur. But that was the US premiere of Science Moms. And again, there was no Wikipedia article. I worked with Cavan and Natalie Newell, and I made them an article. And by the way, that's gotten something like 23,000 views since I made those 3 articles together. They're not the highest numbers, but that's pretty good. The new articles, what happened?
Slides. Oh, no. Okay, we're back where we were.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so besides writing brand new articles, one of the other things we do is we take existing articles that really don't reflect science or criticism correctly, and we fix them. Monica the Medium is a little sister, I'd say, of Tyler Henry. I think she was a high school girl. She's followed around by cameras because she talks to dead people in the school cafeteria. So this is the previous version of the article, and basically it just talks about the show. You know, it's on ABC Family, this is how many seasons it's had, these are what happens in the episodes. Well, this is what we did to it now. Now it says it's paranormal, and that part above the table of contents with the big box around it, that's called the lead. That's supposed to be a summary of what's in the entire rest of the article. And as you can see, the table of contents peeking out from the bottom where it says critical reception. I edited that section, and now it has the information that's just summarized above it. And more than half the lead is now a criticism, which basically says, you know, this is bull. That got somebody at work very pissed, by the way, because she said, I don't believe in Tyler Henry, but Monica's real. So then I did this and showed it to her. That's a good part of being part of this team. You can do that. Okay, Susan asked about my elastic therapy tape. Somebody else at work was talking it up. He heard someone else talking it about, oh yeah, it cures, you know, anything you could think of regarding skeletal structure or muscles, just by stripping it. We're not talking about compression or anything. And by the way, CVS sells the damn thing. Not only the version that the company makes, but they actually went and made their own product, which is what this is. And so you've heard about the lawsuit we have against CVS. So this is the previous version of the article. It was a little bit nebulous. You could read this either way. But then when I got to it, I slapped the alt-med banner on the right side, put an effectiveness section, which basically says it's pseudoscience, and summarized that in the lead. And so actually, I told the person at work, hey, go read Wikipedia on this. And then he had a different opinion from what his friend said. And the good thing is, well, so many people read these things. It's not just to convince my friend, obviously. So, by the way, you don't have to read that, but that's the effectiveness section. And it has critiques from Stephen Novella and it's from Skeptoid. So, you know, we can't write whatever we want. You have to get well-researched publications and use them as sources, and that's what we do. So why does it matter? Because 318,000 plus people look at this page every year, at least last year. And the spikes are from whenever there's a major sporting thing starting up, the World Series, maybe that too, or a new season of football, and certainly the Olympics. Everyone goes, just by the way, I walked outside with this and I saw so many people looking at me. I was wondering if they're going, is he crazy? Or, ooh, I should go buy some of that. So it might be I shouldn't have done that. There's another article. This is one of our big hits, the Blue Whale Game. I don't know if you've heard of this. Anyone hear of this? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's surprising that no one heard of it, and I'll show you why in a minute. But this is the original version of it. It basically says young children, teens, are killing themselves because of a social media game that challenges them to do things that gets more and more difficult. And then suicide is the last thing. So this article is full of gossip, basically. We went and restructured it. I did not work on this page. Other people from GSOW did. And basically now, if a mother is worried that they found on their daughter's mirror a picture of a blue whale, which is one of the claims, by the way, that indicated that they were playing the game, she's not going to kill herself because this is an urban legend. Mm-hmm. And now that's what. So why does that matter? 10,378,000 and so in 1 year. Mm-hmm. I've read this, just the English version of it. So now, from the point we worked on it, you know, people will not unnecessarily worry. All right, so I showed you pages created from scratch, as well as pages that we totally did. But probably the bigger things we do are the smaller changes. We go to an article, it's got criticism in it, but the lead doesn't say that. So we'll summarize that in the lead. We add wiki links, which point from one article to another. We add pseudoscience and alt-med banners, like I showed you. I didn't show you a citation needed, but on a sentence or a paragraph, you could say, this might be okay, but we need a citation. And then that triggers the system to put it in a file that people can look at to try to improve it. If there's something egregiously wrong, we remove the invalid contents. And of course, as I said, we add the skeptical content and that sort of thing. One thing was the incident where James Randi helped Johnny Carson unmask Geller on The Tonight Show. That I found out about that, and that wasn't on anything that I could find in Wikipedia. And I added the same information to 4 Wikipedia pages. So that's quite a hit. So and those get millions of people read those 4 pages collectively in a year. So now they can see that story. And if we find an article which is really off, especially if it's a psychic or some self-promotional thing, we can recommend the article deletion, and then it gets voted for by the Wikipedia editors. So to put this in context, how large is GSOW? Well, as I said, anyone can edit without an account, so we don't know what that number is. But there are 34 million people with accounts. That's pretty big. But only 130,000 are frequent editors. Wikipedia says that's once a month, they call that frequent. Not huge, but still a big number when you compare it to, we have about 100 people. A little more than that. Some are in training, aren't really working yet. So we are definitely a small fish in the huge ocean, but we do make a difference. So I can't just say that to a skeptic organization. I have to give you some facts to back that up. So what is our impact? Okay, so to put this in context, we've been in operation for 8 years, founded by Susan Gerbic, starting with a few people, and ramped up, not quite exponentially, maybe linearly, but so you have to keep that in mind when we see the numbers. Right now, as I said, 100 editors or so. What's the number on this, Susan? It goes up every day.
707.
707 now, articles in many languages. Those are ones that, again, from scratch or greatly improved, not the little minor changes. Those might be 2 orders of magnitude larger than that number. And right now, 1.1 million every month. People look at that, though, just those 700 articles. And collectively, that boggles my mind. All right, so that's the team. So why personally do I do this? Well, I feel I'm a contributor to that number there. So I do feel I'm helping to make the world a little bit more rational. It reduces my frustration because, of course, previously I would only argue with friends and bang my head against the wall because no one would ever listen and change their mind and read anything. And that probably, registers with a lot of people. And it gives me a sense of accomplishment. And so specifically my stats, in the 2 years I've been working, a Yankee Stadium full of people every month read only my 17 articles, not counting my thousands of other changes, perhaps. And total page views for me, a little over 1 million in 2 years. So one thing would be, and it broke again. How do I fix this? Thank you. They have these buttons too close together on the remote.
Is that better?
Went too far.
Top button.
Okay, so the question would be, well, now you see how it's important. Maybe I'll just jump on and do it myself. That's difficult. The details of editing are quite daunting. I tried it before I met this group. Not about skepticism. I just was trying to change Star Trek The Experience, which was at this hotel, because the write-up was wrong. And I worked hours and hours and hours, and it was gone the next day. And I put it back, and it was gone. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't touch the editing. I didn't edit Wikipedia again for, I think it was 5 years. It's difficult. There are rules and guidelines. There are editors who know what they're doing, and they'll step on you if you make the smallest mistake. You can get into conflict with them if you keep taking their stuff off. They can block your account. So going alone on this is very difficult. You can try it, but it's difficult. So the thing about this team is we provide the training and the mentoring to give you the knowledge and the support. You go into a Facebook group, immediately when you're training, it's not even after you've graduated, everyone helps you. So, pitch is here. We need you. We have a table in the back. We'll have business cards. You can talk to Susan, myself, or the other editors. There's quite a number in the room. You could look us up at this URL. That's our email. And we actually have a promo. You can search on YouTube for Guerrilla Skeptics promo, and you'll find it. Do I have the time to play 1 minute?
Yeah, I think you do.
Okay. So we actually created an audio which was played on the European Skeptics podcast as well as the Skeptic Zone. It's about 1 minute long. I am going to play it for you.
Aliens are probing people and mutilating cows. 9/11 was an inside job.
Homeopathy cleared up my athlete's food.
Vaccines cause autism.
Not all psychics are con artists. Mine is definitely real.
We all have friends and family who believe these things and much more. Well, if you're a rational thinker who is tired of arguing on social media and never getting anywhere, we have a solution for you.
Join the Guerrilla Skepticism and Wikipedia team, and we will teach you how to add reliable scientific and skeptical information to the world's #1 source for information, Wikipedia.
We write new articles and improve existing ones. We remove pseudoscience, paranormal, and old myth claims, substituting the actual facts. And we operate in many languages.
We've already reached tens of millions of people searching for information, but as you can imagine, we can never do enough.
So please join us. All you need is a PC, a Facebook account, and a desire to help educate the planet. In fact, you'll be educating the world while you sleep.
Contact us at gsowteam@gmail.com. Guerrilla Skepticism. The time is now.
Music by purpleplanet.com.
And thank you very much for your attention.
So our final speakers, it's a pleasure. I've known Klaus for a long time. He's come to a lot of the TAM meetings, so it's really an honor to bring him up to the stage. So again, another international team. They come from Denmark. We have Steen Svenholm and Klaus Larsen, who run editors of 9/11 Facts, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what they've learned in combating conspiracy theories and something they learned about the minds of conspiracy theorists. So let's welcome to the stage Klaus and Steen.
This is on? All right, thank you very much. It's been a tremendous 3 or 4 days, depending on how you count it, and we're the last act. So it's a thrill to see that there's still so many of you left. That only goes to show how dedicated you are as skeptics, or that the coffee is still free. Anyway, Ray, thanks for, and the board for choosing us. And thanks for a lovely few days. My name is, because you introduced us both, so I am Steen Svenholm, and
I'm Klaus Larsen. I'm Klaus Larsen.
Yeah! Yay! By the way, this is currently being live streamed on Facebook, so we would really appreciate a big applaud. Yeah! Thank you so much. Well, together, Klaus and I have created the website 911facts.dk, where we investigate the many conspiracy theories concerning the terror attack on September 11, 2001. It's available in Danish and in English. So, come and visit. Along the way, we also began to look at why conspiracy theories emerge and why people become conspiracy theorists. We've come up with some quite interesting findings, we think, and we'll present one of these today, which we call the Harriet syndrome.
Conspiracy theorists claim that secret powerful groups are plotting world domination in various ways. But it isn't all about who killed Kennedy, Elvis and Princess Diana, aliens being stored in a freezer at Area 51, or our reptilian overlords. Other false beliefs are likewise based on conspiracy theories. Big Pharma is said to keep cures for cancer secret, while superstition-based remedies are being oppressed. Doctors are said to vaccinate in order to secretly give children autism. The police and the legal system allegedly suppress the knowledge that psychics can solve crimes. And Holocaust deniers point to a massive conspiracy of Jews and Zionists.
So obviously we need to identify methods to limit the spreading of conspiracy theories. We must convince conspiracy theorists that there is no conspiracy. The study of conspiracy theories and theorists is actually relatively new, but psychologists have made quite a progress in the past couple of decades. So the following is compiled from the existing body of psychological studies. Every one of us experiences loss of trust and subsequent loss of control to various degrees. When life offers the proverbial lemons, such as divorces, sackings, financial losses, lost court cases, or rejected applications, there are different ways to deal with this in order to regain control. One reaction would be to simply learn the lesson and move on. After all, failure and misfortune are part of life. Another reaction would be to start blaming external forces, such as management consists of incompetence, spouses are of dubious morals, the government is a bunch of fools. From there, it's a relatively small step to start believing that society is controlled, at least in part, by a group of people with sinister motives. However, given that there's no obvious evidence, the evidence of such a conspiracy must be inferred. These mechanisms have been established already fairly well in the existing academic literature.
The following will be our findings. Because we have noticed a marked difference in conspiracy theorists, which we have named the novice conspiracy theorist, or type 1, and the evangelical conspiracy theorist, type 2. The novice conspiracy theorist casts suspicion on selected flaws in society. Bush is blamed for oil wars in the Middle East. Vaccines cause autism. But the novice conspiracy theorist will also engage in conversation about the new play at the National Theatre, the trend in fashion, and other non-controversial issues. The novice conspiracy theorist will communicate with the theories to others, but also acknowledge that the theories exist in separation. One theory is not connected to or dependent on other theories. To the novice, conspiracy theories do not play any dominant role in his life, so he can most likely be reasoned with. The evangelical conspiracy theorist, on the other hand, can cast suspicion on all flaws in society, real or perceived. The evangelical conspiracy theorist is a preacher, a prophet, one who can hardly talk about anything else. Everything is seen through a conspiracy lens, and everything is connected. If the CIA killed John F. Kennedy, then they also hide aliens at Area 51. If MI6 was ordered by Queen Elizabeth to kill Princess Diana, the Queen is, of course, also a reptilian. Conspiracy theories thus become the defining factor of his worldview and his identity. Not surprisingly, such extremist behavior often results in social exclusion, but this merely strengthens the evangelical conspiracy theorist in his belief. He believes he is telling the truth and is excommunicated for it. Given the social isolation and the conclusion that people who are trying to change his mind will take him away from his truth, there is little hope of changing the views of an evangelical conspiracy theorist. At the very least, it's complicated. But what happens here? Why do some only become novice conspiracy theorists? Most seem to fall into this category, while others, a minority but nevertheless very influential, become evangelicals.
We believe, Klaus and I, that we have identified this factor, and we've named it the Harriet syndrome. It's named after Niels Harriet, whom we see at the top here in the middle. He's a Danish musician. He's a professor emeritus in chemistry at the University of Copenhagen, and he's regarded by some to be Denmark's leading conspiracy theorist. His claim to fame is publishing a paper claiming the existence of so-called nanothermite in the dust of the World Trade Center. This substance was allegedly used to bring down the World Trade Center 1 and 2, and in particular World Trade Center 7. Niels Harriet became what we consider an evangelical conspiracy theorist in 2006 by receiving 3 DVDs from an anonymous benefactor. On one of the DVDs, a clip was shown of the World Trade Center 7 collapsing. Niels Harriet describes it as a life-changing event. To quote him, "So when you see a building collapse in 6.5 seconds, and you're a scientist, you think, what? and then you have to watch it again. So I pressed the button 10 times, and my jaw dropped more and more. Since that day, I've not had a day off. The last part is, well, it's actually all a correct quote, and the last part is very much true because Niels Harrit has since that day given close to 400 lectures across the world and appeared on various television and radio stations.
For the Harrit syndrome to occur, 2 events must happen in succession. 1, the individual must experience a social and mental conditioning of increasing loss of trust in personal and systemic relations with a subsequent loss of control. We call this preconditioning. 2, this individual must have an experience of such magnitude and influence that only the term revelation covers it. It's important to stress that this revelation can happen to both people who are novice conspiracy theorists and those who are not yet conspiracy theorists, shall we say, normal. You don't need to be a novice conspiracy theorist first, but you do need to be preconditioned.
And to trigger this revelation, a messenger is required. People do not seem to go from normal state or novice conspiracy theorist to evangelical conspiracy theorist on their own. No, there has to be a carrier of illumination. This messenger can take the form of a video, a lecture, a television show, or the like, and is usually recommended by an already evangelical conspiracy theorist. The delivery is almost always the same. Something like, watch this video on YouTube, then you'll understand everything. Come to the lecture with me, Niels Harrit is great. Here, read this book, it reveals the truth. And once experienced, the transformation is instantaneous. In one blinding moment, everything becomes clear. Not only are the everyday problems caused by a secret group, no, everything in society throughout history have been one long connected string of conspiracies dedicated to achieving power over everything for all time. Yes, there are clear religious connotations here. The experience is comparable to the illumination of religious saints by angels acting as harbingers. The evangelical conspiracy theorists are clearly seeing themselves as a form of missionaries, even prophets and gurus. They describe themselves as oracles and being awoke, scolding non-believers to wake up sheeple, and themselves as having a life-altering experience.
Niels Harrit himself, he describes it this way, that 9/11 is the key to understanding it all. Once you understand his lecture, you're well on the way to a higher understanding of the world and especially what is wrong with it. This enables the evangelical conspiracy theorist to begin putting together a vision of who are connected to whom and to why. And that's why you will end up with something like this. To us sheeple, this is chaotic and incomprehensible. But to the woke ones, this is a true description of the world.
Type 1 conspiracy theorists make up a considerable part of the population. But there's little evidence that the number of Type 2 conspiracy theorists is very high. However, while Type 1 conspiracy theorists have little influence on public discourse, Type 2 conspiracy theorists have much greater influence, since they are the prime instigators of which conspiracy theories should be disseminated. Type 1 conspiracy theorists appear rather innocuous and innocent. It's still possible to have a rational discussion with them, and they're somewhat open to being wrong. Type 2 conspiracy theorists, however, have a far more aggressive and transboundary behavior. These differences are comparable to religious believers, where some have a moderate approach, while others, a much smaller group, are fundamentalist and extremists.
The distinction between Type 1 conspiracy theorists and Type 2 conspiracy theorists could help us to a much better understanding of what to choose of solutions when we fight the spreading of the theories. What works for Type 1 may not work for Type 2, and vice versa. Type 1 conspiracy theorists can be reasoned with by educating them and using sensible, suitable, logical arguments. Type 2 conspiracy theorists may be reached, since they, much to our surprise, seem to copy good behavior. If we talk politely to them and listen to them, they scale back their verbal aggressions. But for both groups, it will require a lengthy, patient, and tolerant effort. There are no quick fixes to the problem of conspiracy theories.
So, to sum up, Before we can even begin to change the situation, we need to understand not only what conspiracy theorists believe in, but also why they believe it. We think, Klaus and I, that we found a small but crucial part of the puzzle. The existing literature explains why a person becomes a novice conspiracy theorist. The Herod syndrome explains why a person becomes an evangelical conspiracy theorist. And before we round this off, I'd just like to... Oh, you want to say something?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Sure.
Yes, the Herod syndrome will be described in our article, The Rhetorics of Conspiracy Theories, in the upcoming issue of Chaos. That's an academic journal published by the Department of Religious History at the University of Copenhagen.
Of course, that needs to be said. Before we round it up, I'd just like to finish with a story. You see, we're on a manuscript here, so we can say a lot in short time. But there's a specific reason why Klaus and I are here today. Because a couple of years ago, there was a Danish conspiracy theorist, a so-called truther, who stole 2 of our articles from our website and put it up on his own website in his own name, changed it a bit, quite a lot actually, and thus violated copyright laws in Denmark. And to put it shortly, we took him to court, and he lost, and he had to pay. Yeah, thank you.
Wait for it.
Yeah, wait for it. He had to pay us an amount close to $9,000. Awesome. We would have settled on less, but it didn't turn out that way. He took it all away, so he had to pay. And he was actually with someone else, but we just couldn't prove, there's evidence, but we couldn't prove in court that they were 2. So to sum it up, I can only say that we are here due to a conspiracy. And you could say we are here because we used the money to go here. All those $9,000, why not go here? So you could say actually that we are here as skeptics on a truther scholarship. Thank you very much.
All right, how about a nice round of applause for all our speakers this morning?